What is a special economic zone? The concept is not widely understood, but behind the scenes, these zones are having a major impact on global trade and even starting to change the way we think about governance. Since the first was established in the 1950s, there's been a proliferation of more than 7,000 zones across 6 continents. And right now, these so-called zones of progress are quietly spearheading growth in some of the world's most vibrant and dynamic economies.
Well, the special economic zone is simply a geographical area which is an accelerator for whatever the nation, what we'll call it, a base economy, whatever the base economy wants to accelerate. It may want investment in a particular sector, it may want to attract a particular type of workforce, it may want to attract a certain type of investor, and therefore it creates a special zone in which the rules are slightly different.
It's about having a boundaried area that has, special terms in terms of tax incentives, that allows capital to be repatriated to home countries, particularly in locations where it is difficult for currency to cross over the borders.
Special economic zones are zones of opportunity. Special economic zones are created to achieve economic development, social development, and in certain cases also political developments, in as far as that they're allowing to test certain concepts, certain models, before rolling them out in a wider context.
Special economic zones draw on a much longer historical lineage of autonomous cities. The first we know about date back to ancient Mesopotamia, but there are also examples in medieval Europe, India, and Mesoamerica. But the story of modern special economic zones really starts in 1959 with the establishment of the first modern free zone in Shannon Island.
Shannon was an international airport for planes heading to New York over the Atlantic, and they had to fuel up there before making the final part of the journey. And after some technical development, this wasn't necessary any longer. Planes could do the long distance, so they came up with ideas how to attract businesses.
Shannon Free Zone in Ireland was the very first to say, we think we can set up infrastructure, logistics, attract industrial manufacturing companies to work on our shores and contribute to our economy, and of course still benefit the local economy that company came from. And that was sort of the birth, really, of the first economic zones.
Shannon is fascinating because it's a relatively small, 2.4 or so square kilometres, but represents a very significant contribution to the GDP of Ireland relative to its size. And I think, it certainly set the pace. Shenzhen followed, and we started to see that proliferation through the 70s and 80s of economic zones, largely around logistics.
It was the central Chinese leadership that had a discussion following the death of Mao Zedong in 1976. There was a period of around 3 years when China was deciding in which direction it was going to go. Was it going to double down on the Maoist policies, or was it going to open itself up to the outside world and start exploring market reforms? In 1979, China made the decision to establish 4 special economic zones across its coast. They were Shantou, Shenzhen, Xiamen, and Zhuhai.
When they set up the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, I went there with a group of businessmen and looked at it. It was all over. The whole place was rural, agricultural, mud and dust everywhere. And we were talking about how they are going to develop it.
At the time, the Chinese were quite reluctant to just shoot in and make changes across the entire economy. There's this ancient Chinese phrase, 摸着石头过河, which means feeling for the stones as you cross the river. And that's what China wanted to do. They didn't want to just reform whole scale. They wanted to try out things one step at a time to see if they were going to succeed.
They decided to have a technological and innovation revolution. And the idea, if you want to produce high tech, come to China. So they created these pilot zones with the double objective, finance opening and innovation and technology producing. Today, China is a big hub.
Shenzhen has grown from a agricultural area into one of the 4 major cities in China. And its population has already exceeded, I think, 50 million. And the importance of it cannot be underestimated in any sense.
SEZs first started out as ways to encourage industry and promote exports. So they had policies that were mainly related to customs and excise duties and taxation. Over time, we started to see innovations like those in the UAE's free zones.
If you look at the history of Dubai, you are also looking at the history of special economic zones. But economic zones started out as ports. Ports with logistics facilities, increasingly warehousing. The next step of the evolution was manufacturing. At first, some simple assembly, then some actual manufacturing, ever more integrated manufacturing. About 20-25 years ago, discussion started. Does the concept actually apply to services? And this is where, for example, DIFC came in as one of the earliest pioneers, taking a concept that was designed for the physical handling, the physical manipulation of goods, to something as abstract as financial services.
I can remember being in the Emirates Towers, which is opposite the DIFC, looking out the window on the 42nd floor and looking at literally a landscape of sand. I'm being told this is where we're going to build an international financial center.
They looked at how international financial companies were operating around the world. And what they saw is that they were all operating according to a version of British common law. The UAE recognized that maybe it's a good idea to allow this common law system to apply within a certain geographical area to see whether that would give foreign businesses confidence to come in and invest, set up offices and establish a presence within the Middle East.
So back in 2004, the mandate was create an English language environment that operates under the principles of common law and is therefore familiar and not different and will come. And boy, did they come. When Dubai created that zone, boy, did they come.
If I'd said to you 25 years ago, Dubai is going to create one of the top 5 international financial centers in the region with 350 asset managers, 200 banks, 100 insurance companies, you'd have looked at me and called me loopy. If I said it to you now, I think the world's all of a sudden realized that the vision that the UAE and Dubai had 25 years ago has actually been very successful.
Dubai has been predicted to fail many, many times. Back in 2008, during the world financial crisis, so many people were writing, predicting that this is going to fail, that these skyscrapers will stand empty, and eventually the desert will reclaim it, and the antelopes will be roaming around the streets that are now owned by Maseratis and Lamborghinis. None of it happened. Dubai is alive, Dubai is thriving, and this model works.
Certain countries are trying to be competitive. They're actually taking it seriously and treating people like customers. And I would say places like the UAE are doing that. I think arguably when they take this mindset of we want to attract people and we want to attract customers, naturally they're thinking more along the lines of what is going to make this a better place to live, to invest, to work, to do business.
The way for most people like me, entrepreneurs, to emigrate to Dubai is you create a company in one of the free zones in the UAE. That's what I did. And I have many colleagues in my industry living there here, and they did the same thing, right? So we benefited from the free zones, and you really see that they see their residents as customers. And this, I think, is very important.
It's very much like a project where you're quite literally building from the ground up. and you are learning from history, you're learning from the existing world, you're learning from other nations, other cities. You're seeing the things that they do well, the things they don't do so well. And you're just over the course of decades and decades crafting it to make it attractive to all these people. I mean, I'm here. What made me? what would make someone like me look around the world? I have lots of options of where I could live.
I think Dubai understand very well that they are fighting in a new world where people are more and more mobile, and they need to attract talented people with a good package of services that are not too costly. Basically, people want to have good services for the money they pay.
It has sent out a very clear message globally. We are here, we are open for business, and we want to have international business. And we are coming your way to make yourself feel as comfortable as possible.
Moscow City is 6 square kilometers of real estate. So of that, you have commercials, you have residentials, you have your light industrial area, you've got your education, right? You have your Mohammed University of Artificial Intelligence, for example, is in one of those areas. So 60% of the city itself is dedicated towards residential, and the remainder is split amongst light industrial and commercial. In Moscow City, the Free Zone, we have full autonomy, is we work within the government of Abu Dhabi, of course, right? We go by the Abu Dhabi law itself. However, we do have the opportunity to utilize common law if the clients that are here see fit. We always try to cater to the client's needs, but at the same time being able to live, work, play, and learn, like we say here at Moscow City.
A lot of country leaders are very focused on industrial zones. They're very focused on one particular industry segment. I have a view that the most successful zones, the DMCC has been named Global Free Zone of the Year for 10 years now, I think 6 of them while I was there. It's a mixed use zone. It doesn't switch the lights off at 5 p.m. and everybody goes home. It's got the capability to drive revenue and to drive activities 24/7. And I think that's a really important part of understanding the evolution of very successful zones.
We are really at the stage where this old split between working world and living world doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't hold anymore. It's coming together. All of us are working, or many of us are working from home partially, right? We are way more mobile. Special economic zones that are empty deserts during the weekend, during the evenings. That's a waste of real estate.
I think it's relatively clear that you see 3 major trends in the special economic zone industry. First, you have this development from warehousing to manufacturing to services, financial services, residential. Then you have a trend that you have more and more special economic zones that are privately governed on behalf of the government, because that seems to work better than a public administered special economic zone. And this third trend is that you have more and more autonomy given to the zones so that they can try out new things. So if you now combine those 3 trends, for me the logical next step is an autonomous international city which is privately governed on behalf of the government and can adopt international best practices. That means you can cherry pick the best regulations and procedures from everywhere and try out to make a product that is attracting not only businesses, but also high potentials.
It's a very cautious balance between making sure that your free zone has got its autonomy and independence, but that you're still reporting to the government, which actually at the end of the day is the ultimate owner as well. So it's a very cautious balance between having the reputation of being independent, having the regulatory independence, but you're also still part of government.
It is not a coincidence that some of the most promising experiments in good governance are found in very unstable parts of the world. Take the famous Honduran charter cities, the SEZs. Latin America has a big problem with safety, and especially Honduras. So people are running away, they're risking their lives, traveling on boats to places like the US. Why would you do that if you would have an opportunity to do all the same things, to fulfill your dreams, to start a business, to do an intellectual job and find like-minded people on your home soil?
Welcome to Prospera, a place where pioneering culture meets Caribbean vibes. We are building the most innovative startup city in the world, a beacon of freedom and prosperity for all. Our entrepreneurs and startups are pioneers, pushing boundaries and shaping the future.
Prospera model was a very interesting one, which was basically saying that you can pick and choose your regulatory model from anywhere in the world, or create your own regulatory model that works for you. And it can work, and it can be for any industry. So it can be for biotech, it can be for robotics, it can be for crypto, it can be for financial services, it can be for traditional industries, new industries. And we will curate an environment for you to prosper.
There are three main ways that the Honduran SEZs have innovated on the model of special economic zones. The first is that they've allowed businesses that are located within them to pick and choose from a menu of OECD regulations. The second is that they're privately governed. And the third is that they have a citizen's contract that exists, determining the relationship between the people that operate the city and the residents.
The trend is moving to more private-driven economic zones. There have been many private economic cities established already, although they've been more traditional economic zones. But now it's not just about that. It's about governance. It's about having a regulatory environment that can serve multiple businesses, services, so on and so forth. And as Dubai had embraced that change, it's actually helped Dubai kind of evolve from a sleepy town to a mega city. There are now the opportunities for these other countries to embrace this new wave of having private governance structures made available for businesses to set up and transform their economies using that model.
In 2019, if you would ask me like, hey, how much will things change? I might have thought, look, certain things will change, but there's kind of like this Overton window of what's possible. Post 2020, so much has changed. And I think the Overton window has just been blown wide open. Now's the time to be talking about these big ideas, because now we could actually see some area, some territory, or some free zone really outcompete others, because the Overton window is so big. It's just been enlarged now.
The free private cities concept is the concept which the world's coming towards. It's slightly ahead of its time, but I can see the trend is towards operating free private cities. So governance, policy governance, remains the domain of the nation state, but the operations within the zone are operated by the customer. And that is largely the business individuals that choose to make that their home. But if you can merge the principles of the free private city with the policy concerns of a nation and put them together, you create the future of special economic zones. No question.